Well, it is Thursday night, guys. We've got a good Thursday night game tonight. I'm really hopeful this is the best Thursday night game since the first week when we had that Chiefs-Ravens game. Falcons-Buccaneers tonight. I'm really excited to watch this one. So, obviously, we're going to go through some questions before week 5 tonight. I don't know about you guys, but I also feel like Tuesdays and Wednesdays always feel like such long days because you don't have football in the middle between there. So, I always love when Thursday night rolls back around and we get to watch some football here. So we'll go through some injuries tonight that are relevant for this week, and then we'll get into some questions as the chat starts to fill up. So make sure to go down there, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support. And tonight is the night, by the way, to take advantage of the Kirk Cousins free line on Underdog. It is 0.5 total yards. That's Kirk Cousins' line on Underdog right now. So if you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, there's a link in the description. You can sign up using code FFN, and they'll match your first deposit 50% up to $1,000 of bonus cash when you deposit at least $10, and you'll be able to take advantage of the free Kirk Cousins line this week. So make sure to go down there, take advantage of that if you haven't, because it also is a good way to support the channel as well. All right, so let's get into some injuries tonight that are going to be relevant to keep an eye on here. I know I saw that Jalen McMillan is out for the Bucs, which isn't, that's not really a huge deal or anything like that. But let's go ahead and pull it up right now. So let's take a look at the inactives. The inactive list is out. Jalen McMillan inactive, Trey Palmer inactive, Antoine Winfield inactive again for the Bucs. So that defense is getting healthier. It is getting healthier for sure. And so, no need to get really concerned about the Bucs defense moving forward, but they're not great in fantasy football either way. Antoine Winfield being back is going to be a big help for them if they can get him back. Falcons inactives, Troy Anderson on the defensive side of the ball. Big time IDP guy. I love Troy Anderson. Him being out's a big deal for them. That's really the big injuries. Like the quarterbacks are healthy, the receivers are healthy, the running backs are healthy on both sides of the ball. So honestly, it's a great Thursday night game to just watch as a football fan. So I'm excited about this one. So let's go ahead and start answering some questions, guys. If you've got questions, put them in the chat. Fill that chat up. Captain Insano, what's up, man? First time being in here. Well, I appreciate you being in here tonight, man. Micah Brown, what's going on? Bucky Irving or Trey Sermon? So, they're really close for me, right? They're really close for me. I said it earlier in the week. I said it yesterday on the running back rankings video. At this point, Bucky has separated from Rachaad White to me. Because last week, they both came in injured, and Bucky Irving still handled the majority of the work. Even though they did basically handle the same amount of carries as each other, he was better and more effective and got more targets than Rachaad White did. So Bucky Irving to me was definitely, he definitely came out and was much better this week. So with him tonight versus the Falcons defense, not a particularly strong matchup. Trey Sermon though, there's an element to it of will he share the backfield? I don't think he will. And I think his matchup is really good. But I just think that I've seen more from Bucky Irving this year than I've ever seen from Trey Sermon his entire career. Trey Sermon's been in the league since 2021, and he's been a nothing burger. So I just don't really have that much confidence in Trey Sermon as is. So I'll go with Bucky tonight. I'll roll the dice on Bucky. Neither one of them is a fantastic play, but I think Bucky definitely probably has the better week between himself and Trey Sermon. Next up, we had Titan. What's going on, man? What's up, bro? Wondering Otten or Ertz? I'd go with Zach Ertz. The thing with Cade Otten is up until last week, really, he was relevant in week 3. Really, though, he's been pretty irrelevant for most of the time. I just haven't seen enough from Cade Otten because, there's a lot of options there in Tampa. And with Jalen McMillan out, that's kind of been his opening, I guess. But ultimately, Ertz is just more consistently getting opportunities. And with Otten, with tight ends, here's the way I look at it. If you have a tight end that has lots of upside and not always consistent, as most of them are not, but they have a lot of upside, I'm good with playing them over someone who's consistent like Ertz, because Ertz has the consistency, right? He has the consistent target share, and he's also in an offense that values his role, and he's just, in a good offense right now. I would play Kyle Pitts over Zach Ertz. I'm not playing Cade Otton because I just ultimately don't think Cade Otton's upside is that high. So I would go ahead and play Ertz over Otton. Andy Gilliland, what's going on, man? Would you start Najee, Wicks, or Trey Sermon at the flex? Upside with Najee. I was really disappointed last week with what we got from Najee because what I said on the running back ranking video yesterday, and this is very important, with Najee Harris over the years, what his upside has come from are two things: red zone carries and targets. Now, after Big Ben's last year, which was Najee's first year, his targets went away. So he dropped from running back 3 to running back 14. But he was still able to be a running back 14 because he was getting in the end zone consistently. Now, this year, the targets aren't really there, and the red zone opportunities aren't there because Justin Fields is running in close to the end zone. So it just takes away really anything because Najee's not a big play guy. When I look at, Wicks, I think Wicks was obviously the big pickup for a lot of people this week. And I don't have a problem with it necessarily because I do think Wicks is the better player. But, I think that Wicks is also going to be really inconsistent. The guy who's it's an inconsistent offense for sure, especially at the receiver position. And I don't trust Wicks, but he definitely has more upside than Najee, so I'd play him over Najee. And then Trey Sermon, like I said, with Trey Sermon, I just don't ultimately believe in the player that much. I do believe that he will handle the workload, but ultimately with this matchup for the Packers against the Rams, I think the upside is with Wicks more than it is with Sermon or Najee. So I would go ahead and play Wicks myself. Cody Miller, what's going on, man? Good to see you in here tonight. Cooper Lauren, what's going on? Need to start 2 this week, and it's not very pretty. Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, Jerome Ford, or Tank Dell. You say that, and I see what you're saying, but you've got upside here. Bucky is going to be one of my guys this week. I'd put him in the... it sucks. I'm under the impression that you're asking for 2 flexes, and you're in a 2-flex league. I would move Bucky Irving in the running back spot and put in whoever's in your running back 2 spot in the flex, because you don't want to have a Thursday night player in the flex. It's just not good team management, because if somebody goes down incidentally at practice, it's already happened multiple times this year, then you have the duality of going with running back or wide receiver if you can pull somebody from the flex who got hurt, right? So if you have a flex spot locked up as early as Thursday, well, if you get an injury on Friday and they get declared out and you've got a flex spot taken up already, let's say that you like the wide receiver play better than your running back play that week. Well, you got to play a running back because they're in your running back spot. So I know that kind of sounded complicated. Point being, do not put a Thursday night play in your flex. I would personally go put in Bucky Irving in the running back 2 slot. And I would also go ahead and probably play Jerome Ford, because I have no interest in using both Bucs running backs. And at this point, I'm very confident putting Bucky Irving over Rachaad White. And with Jerome Ford, it's he's in a similar boat to Rachaad White where he'll be splitting the backfield. But the good thing with Jerome Ford is that he's actually more efficient than Rachaad White is. So I would personally take Bucky Irving and Jerome Ford. Tank Dell is definitely on my radar right now. I'll tell you guys that. He's on my radar because I do think, I said this, I was thinking it at least. I don't know if I did say it yesterday, I can't remember, but I think Tank Dell has a better second quarter of the fantasy season than he did in the first. It's hard to be much worse than he was in the first quarter, obviously. I think when he gets healthy, he's going to be better. I think he's going to have better weeks ahead. So, yeah, I would say I'm watching him, not putting him in my lineup yet, though. And guys, just a reminder, Kirk Cousins, the line on underdog tonight is 0.5 total yards. If you haven't taken advantage of underdog yet and you want to take advantage of this line, go down in the description, grab that link, use code FFN to sign up for underdog, and when you deposit $10, they'll match it 50% up to $1,000 in bonus cash, and you'll take advantage of this Kirk Cousins line, which is obviously a must. It's a must-do because it's a higher on 0.5 total yards. So take advantage of underdog. It's also a big way to support the channel as well. I really appreciate it. Titan, what's going on? Odunze or Sermon for this week? I'd probably go Sermon, unfortunately. Look, I think Odunze is in a rough spot right now because with Keenan back, that inevitably shrinks his volume. It inevitably shrinks his volume, and it was so crazy. I was looking at something today on X. I don't know if you guys knew this, but earlier in the offseason, Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think he was at the Combine or something like that, and he was getting interviewed, and, you know, Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks last year, he got signed over to the Bears, and in his interview, he was asked, like, what's your advice to, Caleb Williams and, the other guys there in Chicago on how to work with Shane Waldron? Like, what are your thoughts? And Jackson Smith-Njigba took him like 10 seconds to answer it, and the only thing he said was, I mean, good luck, I guess. And I was like, that's an interesting thing to say. And then I look at this thing on X the other day, and I see that his route tree with Waldron was like, it was like elementary level. Like, literally you could ask like 5th or 4th graders to run those routes that he was running. And I saw a pre and a post Waldron, with Waldron and without Waldron route tree for him, and it's like night and day different this year. So the point I'm bringing that up is because Rome Odunze is getting bad treatment with Shane Waldron. I think Shane Waldron sucks. I think he does. Like, he's ruining DJ Moore right now. He's not helping Caleb, and Rome with Keenan in effect, it's a problem. It's a big problem. So, with Rome, I want to buy in. It's just not there right now. I would personally go ahead and play Sermon this week because at least Sermon we know is going to, if not monopolize the backfield, I bet he gets like 12 or 14 carries. With Odunze, I think he gets lucky to get like 4 or 5 targets, to be honest with you. Let's see what we've got next. Captain Insano, what's going on? Start sit. Tough start sit. Start 4. Nico, Reed, Deontay, Evans, Olave, Reek, and Flowers. Well, it's tough in the sense because it's good problems. It's good problems to have. So, obviously, I'm playing Nico for sure. Nico's my wide receiver 1 on the week. He's my wide receiver 1 moving forward. Jaden's also going to go in because Jaden, for me, is top 10. I think that with Mike, I'm going to play him tonight. Against the Falcons defense, it's not a matchup that really terrifies me. The only matchup that scares me for Mike Evans particularly is when they play the Saints. Marshawn Lattimore typically gets the best of Mike Evans. So in a couple weeks, we'll have to watch for that. But right now, I'm very comfortable playing Mike Evans. So I'd go Mike, Nico, and Jaden for sure. And then I'd probably play Deontay over Tyreek Hill. Yeah, Tyreek Hill, it is so bad right now, man. It is so bad, guys. I mean, this is such a major issue for everybody. I mean, it's a major issue for every single player in Miami's offense. I mean, they cannot function without Tua. That offense is literally a joke. That team is a joke without Tua. I'm comfortable playing Deontay over him. I'd probably play Tyreek over Flowers and Olave, but Deontay's good. So I'd go Nico, Reed, Deontay, and Mike Evans. Andy Jolin, what's going on? Would you drop Keenan for Braylon Allen or Fields? Ooh. You know, it's crazy that you asked me that question because I am in a 14-team league on ESPN, and I have Keenan, and I was thinking to myself earlier today, literally, I was like looking at Braylon Allen on the waiver wire, and I was like, man, it's a 14-team league. Like, how is he on waivers? And I was thinking, like, who would I drop for him? And I had a couple guys, like, I had, like, Lad McConkey on bye week. I had Gus Edwards on bye week. And I was like, you know, there's two guys that I would drop. The two guys I'd most likely be to drop is Gus Edwards and Keenan Allen. And I literally sat and thought about dropping Keenan Allen for, like, 5 minutes. And maybe it's just me. I've always been a big Keenan Allen guy. I've always thought, like, I truly believe he's one of the most underrated receivers over the last, like, 20 years. Like, he has been elite in fantasy football. And obviously this year's not going great for him. But with Keenan, maybe I'm just biased. I ultimately am not comfortable dropping Keenan Allen yet. I'm not. I'm just not comfortable with it, man. I think that he's got so much potential. And it's not that, like, him as a player is obviously great. What I really love about Keenan is that when you look at that week 1 game, he had like 11 targets for Caleb. And the reason is because, like, he runs a lot of high percentage routes for the quarterback. So, you know, his first game back, he only had 3 targets. I think he actually raises that number this week back up to like 6 or 8. So I'm just not comfortable dropping Keenan yet. I get your point. Like, I don't think that either Braylon or Fields should be on waivers at this point. I'm not there with Keenan yet. I can't drop him yet. I'm not comfortable with it. I'm just not comfortable with dropping Keenan Allen. Cody Miller, what's going on? I got either Pitts or Freiermuth for my tight end. Who you taking? I'd play Pitts. Yeah, I'd go with the upside. Listen, you know, Freiermuth has been better than I thought, and I've never been a big Pat Freiermuth guy, but I do think that he's definitely done well when you take all things considered compared to last year. Quarterback situation is better. Offense is much better as a result. But Pitts tonight, the Bucs secondary is weak, and I get it. He goose-egged last week. It's hard to play him off the goose egg. I would do it personally. I think there's more upside for Pitts tonight to get in the end zone. Rock out. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat tonight. Bench Pitts for Parkinson PPR. Another Kyle Pitts question. I'm glad. I'm actually surprised I've only seen 2 Pitts questions so far. You know, Colby Parkinson, I've said it for weeks now. I want to kick him to the curb. I really, really do. But the problem that we're seeing with Parkinson compared to other guys is that he's so hard to kick to the curb because he's like one of their few last receiving options. I mean, let's look at the last several weeks for Parkinson. I'm going to pull him up right now because I've never been a big Colby Parkinson guy. Colby Parkinson right now is the tight end 20. And last 3 games, 1.7 fantasy points, 3.6, and 5.3. 7 targets last week, 5 targets the week before. I'm going Pitts because listen, like, Parkinson, the reason I don't really like him is because if you actually look back to Parkinson's career, he's mostly been a blocking tight end. Like, go look at his career numbers. Like, they speak for themselves. He's not that young. He's been in the league plenty, but he's just mostly been a blocking tight end. So now he's in this position where they have no choice. They have to use him. They can't even play their third string tight end. He's out, Davis Allen. And I think he's actually a better receiver tight end than Parkinson is. Kyle Pitts, I get it. Like I said, he just goose-egged. It sucks to play him after that. I think the upside is with him tonight. I think he does have upside against the Bucs defense. I'd play him personally over Pitts. Appreciate the super chat, man. And for those of you who do know, super chats are the way to get your question answered immediately. That is how you jump the line. Until then, I just go from top to bottom. Nate Dogg, what's going on, man? Appreciate the super chat. Good to see you in here tonight. Bucky Irving or Chase Brown? Ooh. I know we were talking earlier today in Patreon, and, with Chase Brown, I do really like his upside, because I wonder if it starts to become a Bucky Irving situation in Cincinnati. Because Zach Moss hasn't been atrocious like Bucky, or like Rachaad White has. White's been pretty atrocious. Moss has not been. Moss has been serviceable. But that's really about it. Like, he's been serviceable. So, I do want to believe that Chase Brown starts to get more. The Ravens matchup here, it's not even just like, that's obviously a tough matchup. That's like strength. Ravens run defense is so hard to run against, and they just shut down James Cook. So, like, I don't think that Chase Brown's going to be able to get it done very well. But I will say that, his receiving upside is pretty good. I think Rachaad White, I think Bucky Irving is actually a pretty good play this week. I think so. So I would probably play Bucky Irving over Chase Brown and take that upside and see, listen, maybe he takes over the backfield tonight. Maybe he does. Maybe there's a clear answer, and we get a lot of clarity from this game. So I would go with Bucky Irving personally. Appreciate the super chat, man. Always good to see you in here. Mac, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat tonight. 12-team half PPR. My running backs are Jacobs, JSN, Brooks for Bijan and Addison. So you're going to get Bijan and Addison for Jacobs, JSN, and Brooks. Yeah, I would take that trade for sure. Look, both Bijan and Jacobs right now are tough to rely on right now for sure. They're really tough to rely on. And so I think that I'd rather take the upside with Bijan personally. And with Jack Smith-Njigba, I like the player a lot, especially in a full PPR league, but in a half PPR, it's tough. So I think that with Addison, you get more of a scoring upside, obviously, as we saw from him in week 4. So I think you get more upside on the board. The guy that, like, honestly, I just genuinely do not understand this, is why people are so interested in Jonathan Brooks. It doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. I don't get this one. So I'm really comfortable doing that trade. I would, like, you ever seen that meme of Kramer from Seinfeld where he, like, stands up and, like, shakes the guy's hand immediately when the offer's made? Like, that's how I feel trying to get out and make out with this trade. I would take that trade in a heartbeat. Appreciate the super chat. Hustle Kings, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Chase Brown or Rachaad White? I would take Chase Brown. I've got no confidence in Rachaad White. The problem is this. For years and years, we've seen Rachaad White do well in fantasy because he got the volume. It reminds me of Najee. For years and years, Najee had the volume. Well, Rachaad White's been inefficient during that time. He's been really inefficient. So you take away volume from him, what does he have to stand on? He's not efficient. He wasn't even efficient. The most efficient game of his career was almost last week. I mean, he had like 4.9 yards per carry on 10 carries. I think that, yeah, I'm very comfortable playing Chase Brown over Rachaad White personally. The matchup versus the Falcons is already not, like, the best. And Chase Brown, I get it. The matchup's pretty brutal there too, but I would go with Chase Brown personally. Rachaad White, I really do think that we're very close to watching him lose the backfield in Tampa. So I would do it myself. Appreciate the super chat. Back up to the top. Super chats get you to jump the line, but until then, I go from top to bottom. L Smith 18, what's going on, man? Should I drop Dak for Justin Fields? Dak is... I can't drop Dak. I can't. Dak has been... Let's go through his first several games, and let's see if that shifts your thoughts. Because Dak and Fields are back-to-back right now in overall production in fantasy this year. Dak is the quarterback 7, and Fields is the quarterback 8. Dak, his first 2 weeks, 11.5 points and 14.9 points. I get it. Those aren't great weeks. Week 3, almost 30 points, and then 16.7 in week 4. So he's getting better. And the reality is, like, the reason I don't want to drop Dak is, number one, the name value, right? Like, name value means a lot in fantasy leagues. People will trade for him. Number 2 is because this offense can't run. So if your offense can't run, Dak's going to continue to be forced to throw. And, CeeDee's definitely clearly the best guy. The reality is, like, they do have other options as supporting cast members. Like, you've got Ferguson, obviously, who loves, Dak loves to throw to tight ends. You've got Tolbert, who sometimes comes out of the woodwork. And same with Brandon Cooks, right? So, like, you've got a decent supporting cast of players, but obviously CeeDee is the guy. So, Dak, I just can't picture dropping Dak in any scenario because, again, name value is there, and he will do really well in fantasy. But I get what you're saying. Fields is outproducing Dak on the year by 1.7 points. So, like, Fields has been a really good player in fantasy. I don't want to drop Dak for him, though. Like, Fields definitely has potential to really bomb at some point. So I'm just not doing it. I get it. Like, try to add him if you can by doing something like dropping like a running back 6. If you're comfortable doing that, but I'm not dropping Dak. No way. Next up, we had Rock Out. Rock Out, appreciate the super chat. Trade offer for my Higgins for Wicks. Not doing it. No, I wouldn't either. Yeah, I would not do it. Listen, guys, people need to understand this about T. Higgins. T. Higgins is going to have a big week. It's going to come. Mark that down. Last week, he had like 12 targets in that game versus the Carolina Panthers. And by the way, more red zone, or not red zone necessarily, but more end zone targets. Joe Burrow's looking for him. He looked for him in that first game back versus the Commanders. He just hasn't connected yet. And T. Higgins wants to perform well. It's a contract year for him. They're getting him the ball. It's just, it hasn't worked out yet. It will work out. With Wicks, that guy is going to be so inconsistent. He's their number 3 option in most weeks. So I just don't, I'm not doing that personally. I'd hold on to T myself. Appreciate the super chat. Wes Khaled, what's going on? You were up next. Appreciate the super chat. Pitts or Freiermuth? Yeah, I answered this one earlier. I think I'm going to go with Pitts because with Pitts, I just get the big play ability that I don't with Freiermuth. And I get it. Like, Freiermuth has definitely been more consistent than Pitts. Freiermuth got in the end zone last week, which is good. But ultimately, I don't think the matchup tonight for Pitts is bad. Like, Pitts is going up against a weak Bucs secondary. They're already weak, and without Antoine Winfield, they're even weaker. So I'm going to go with Pitts myself. I get where you're coming from with this one. So I'd leave it up to you. Like, if you have a gut feeling that Freiermuth's going to be the guy, play him. I am not on board with it personally, so I would personally play Kyle Pitts in this matchup. Appreciate the super chat. Soul Train, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat tonight. PPR. Pick 2, Swift, Moss, Achane, and Trey Sermon. So, unfortunately, I am going to go with Achane because these guys don't provide, none of them really provide me enough upside to justify benching Achane. Like, if we were talking about, like, I would even play Ramondre over him this week because I think Ramondre does have more upside than Achane this week. The other guy, I probably will play Moss. Moss is probably the other guy because the Bengals offense is starting to click. And it's really easy to forget the Bengals specifically, like how good that team can be. If Burrow is on and Chase is on and T is on, that offense is really hard to stop. And that opens it up for the run game. And I'll give, not to get too far into the weeds on this one, but for years and years, I always thought that Mixon was kind of a byproduct of Joe Burrow opening up lanes for him. They undervalued Mixon for sure, because Mixon has been much better than the running backs. But that being said, Moss has had 2 straight pretty good fantasy production weeks. So I'm going to go with Moss. I think that the Ravens matchup it's brutal for sure. It's not an easy matchup to deal with. But at the same time, I look at it and I'm like, okay, this guy is on a team that usually does historically well against the Ravens. So I'm going to go with Moss and Achane in a full PPR format. Appreciate the super chat. Chaludo, you were up next. Appreciate the super chat. Pick 3. Bijan, Connor, Walker, or Aaron. Thanks. Walker for sure. Walker's going to my lineup. There's no question about it. Kenneth Walker, the matchup versus the Giants is fantastic, and he's coming off a hat trick. So, Kenneth Walker's been nothing short of spectacular this year when he's played. I mean, he's been top 3. He's been elite. Walker does not go on the bench. Man, you got good problems here. Aaron Jones it's tough to bench him. Against the Bills, the matchup's not particularly ideal, but again, I don't think that the Vikings are matchup dependent. They're just not a matchup dependent team. They're rolling over everybody right now. So I just don't look at any matchup and being like, oh, I'm kind of scared to play them. I just don't feel that way. So that's a tough one to bench. With Connor, I think he's going to have a good week as well. I think he'll bounce back. He already did bounce back last week. I'm probably going to sit Bijan. I probably am. With Bijan, I ranked him lower than Connor this week because I just think it's time to address reality with Bijan, which is that Bijan has not been very good in fantasy. He just hasn't been. He's not bad. He's not been bad. He's been good, but he hasn't been what we thought he could be, which is disappointing. So I'm going to go with Connor, Walker, and Aaron Jones if it's me personally. Appreciate the super chat. Nate Dogg, good to see you again. Pick 2 for the flex. Jennings, Sermon, Hunt, Brown, and Lazard. For the flex, Kareem Hunt's going in. Kareem Hunt, I'm very confident in. Saints matchup's not particularly great, but neither was the Chargers last week, and he still got it done. So with the Chiefs offense, I want pieces in it. I'll go with Hunt, and it's between Sermon and Chase Brown. Trey Sermon's matchup's really good. But again, I think I'm going to ultimately take the upside play with Chase Brown. Chase Brown, the one thing that really has gotten me over the last several weeks is he looks really explosive. And I think that the Bengals are starting to see that now too. I think that's why he's getting more playing time. So I'm going to take the shot on Chase Brown over Trey Sermon, who I just think is kind of mid. He's not even been mid his entire career. He's been mostly pretty gross. He's been in the league since 2021. He's been around. So I'm going to go with... It reminds me of the Cam Akers thing last week where it's people want to play him because of the opportunity. I'd personally rather just take the shot on the upside with Chase Brown and Kareem Hunt. Appreciate the super chat, man. G Medina, what's going on? Good to see you in here tonight. Pick a wide receiver from my 2. For my number 2. Ayuk, Pickens, or Wandale. So here's the thing about Wandale. It's going to be important to note this. So Wandale Robinson entering the week, I thought would be a pretty good play this week, especially if you're in a full PPR format, because Wandale's role, as I've been saying, is very set in stone in this offense. The problem that Wandale's going to see this week is that it doesn't look like Malik Nabers is going to play. Now, that may seem like a great thing for Wandale. He may get 20 targets this week instead of the 14 that he got last week. I don't see that happening. I mean, maybe he gets 10, but the Giants' offense cannot function without Malik Nabers, I don't think. I think we're going to see a really ugly beatdown from the Seahawks and an inability altogether to move the ball without Malik Nabers. I mean, without the threat of him, they really don't have anything going for them. So Wandale, I'm not playing him this week, personally. It's between Ayuk and Pickens, and I'd play Pickens this week because I think the matchup is really good against the Cowboys. Pickens, to me, like, the Cowboys defense has already been exposed. Number one. Number two, Pickens had a 100-yard game last week. Fields is when he's been tested this year, he can throw the ball down the field. Unlike Pickens has been able to get for any of his career, basically. So I'm going to go with Pickens here. I think that Pickens' upside this week against the Cowboys is just higher than Ayuk's with, against the Cardinals, the matchup's not terrible, but I need to see it first with Brandon Ayuk before I put him in my lineup. Unless I'm talking about, I would play him over Wan'Dale this week probably, but not over George Pickens. Appreciate the super chat. Next up, we had Zach L. What's going on tonight? Appreciate the super chat. Do I trade Reed for Monty? I have Gibson, Achane, and Mixon, and Chase, Neighbors, Reed, Terry, and Smith. Ooh. Chase, Neighbors, Reed, Terry, and Smith. You got a good team. You got a really good team. I'm probably not going to do it. I'm probably not. This is kind of what I've been talking about the last several days. I don't think that the majority of the fantasy community is grasping the value of Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed is now Deebo Samuel. And Deebo's value was slow growing as well. And Jaden Reed's starting to show that. Jaden Reed literally is Deebo Samuel. He literally is a clone of Deebo. If you think about Deebo Samuel, I just look at the carries that he gets. He's basically getting one carry per game. And with Jaden Reed, the offense and the connection that he has with Love is special. It's really special. So I can't do it, man. I get it. Monty's a great player. I would love to have Montgomery on my team, especially with Gibbs, because not only is it a handcuff situation, you can play them both every week confidently. I think you need more for Reed. I'm trying to I'm actively trying to convince people to reset their expectations and recalibrate the value of Jaden Reed in the fantasy community right now. Because most creators they're not seeing it. And I don't get why they don't see it. Probably because I've always said I don't think all of them watch football. I've got no problem saying that because I don't think they do. So Jaden Reed, I think honestly, he's got lots of upside, and I just think ultimately it's more than what Monty has. So if I'm trading Reed away, I'm asking for probably a Kyron Williams type. That's probably what I'm going to ask for. Appreciate the super chat. Rock out, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Trade Fields for Diggs or Worthy. Got Purdy as quarterback 1. Ooh. I would trade Fields for Diggs. I don't know if I'd do it for Worthy. Because your situation, I'm not so sure I wouldn't be playing Fields right now over Purdy. Now, obviously, if you can get a major lineup upgrade at wide receiver with Diggs, I would do this. But Worthy right now, I like the upside of Worthy. I'm more trying to trade somebody I'm trying to trade somebody like a Josh Jacobs for Worthy, or a Zach Moss for Worthy. Your situation here, if you had Jaden Daniels at quarterback, I'd be yeah, I'm more comfortable doing this one. But I'm not so certain. If it was me, I would be playing Fields this week over Purdy. So unless I'm getting a clear upgrade at a position like Diggs would provide in most situations, I'm not going to trade Fields away for Worthy. Because I just think I like Worthy's direction he's heading in. I think he's going to be really good in fantasy. But we're not there yet. And the reality is with trades, when you're trading away, the mindset should be what the value is today. When you trade for somebody, you want to keep in mind what the value will be tomorrow. So I would not personally trade Fields for Worthy, but I would do it for Diggs. Appreciate the super chat. No, this is Patrick. Appreciate the super chat. I'm sorry, that threw me back. That gave me some nostalgia. SpongeBob reference there. Half PPR wide receiver. A.J. Brown, Jaden Reed, JSN, Calvin Ridley, Rome Odunze. Do I drop Ridley or Odunze for Leggett? Is Ridley worth holding on to at this point? No one will trade. I get your point. Ridley is definitely a hard sell right now because of, I mean, it's not just him. Like, he himself has actually done well this year when given the opportunity. His problem is the offense sucks. Like, even with Rudolph last week, like, Rudolph's not, I saw plenty, trust me. Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I saw plenty of Mason Rudolph. He was better than Kenny Pickett, but he wasn't doing much. So, I get it. I get where you're at. I just think that with Ridley, I'm not comfortable dropping him because I know, again, litmus test this. If your league mate was trying to give you Ridley, you probably wouldn't want to trade for him. But if he dropped him, would you drop like Dontavian Wicks for Calvin Ridley? I would definitely do that for sure. So ultimately, I think that Ridley does have a lot of value, like on the trade market. It's just probably not what you want for him. So I'm not going to do that because I'm just going to personally hold and wait for him to have a big week because he will hit a big week. Like, he is going to hit a big week again because they have to figure out a way to get him the ball. In order for them to hit explosive plays like they did in week 2 against the Jets, they're going to have to give Ridley opportunities down the field. So I'm gonna hold on to Ridley personally. Odunze is just, he's not progressing, not because he's not a good player, but because Shane Waldron, I've been saying for weeks, is doing this team a disservice. Actually, I really just started saying it today, but they are. But he is. And Leggett, I'm not there yet with dropping Ridley for him. So I get what you're saying. Like, it sucks that nobody will trade for Calvin Ridley, but he's got value. You're just not seeing it because you're probably asking for a little too much. Appreciate the super chat. Next up, we had Adrian Hernandez. What's going on? Good to see you in here tonight. Start Zach Moss or Chase Brown or Bucky Irving. Ooh. Bucky Irving is... These guys are all relatively close to the same tier. Like, that's the honest truth. Is that I could see myself going with either one of these guys. I prefer Brown this week over Zach Moss. I ranked Zach Moss higher, but I actually, kind of after considering it, do prefer Zach Moss over Chase Brown. With Bucky Irving, the matchup for both teams I don't think is particularly great. And I ultimately just kind of trust Bucky Irving's workload a little bit more than I trust Chase Brown's. So I probably would play Bucky over Brown. Because literally, like, if you look at my running back rankings from yesterday, these guys are literally all back-to-back-to-back. Like, they start out the tier, Moss, Brown, Bucky. And the irony is, I actually reflipped this today to Bucky, Brown, and then Moss. So that's what I would do personally. I would personally go with Bucky tonight out of this group right here. Appreciate the super chat. Next up, we had Ryan Allen. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat tonight. Pick 2. Hunt, Bucky, Dobbs, Justice Hill, or Zamir. Half PPR. Then Mayfield or Anthony Richardson. Thanks. First of all, play Baker Mayfield tonight. Baker is... First of all, Anthony Richardson may not play. And second of all, Baker is he's just looked much better than Anthony Richardson has. I have zero faith in Anthony Richardson right now. And I have much more faith in Baker at this point. So that's first and foremost, I would play Baker over Richardson. And second of all, I am not ever going to play Zamir White. I literally don't. I mean, Zamir White literally is droppable at this point. I actually have him in a Dynasty League. I'm willing to sell him for a couple bucks fab. Like, that's where I'm at. I think he has zero value. So, let's get that out of the way. Pick 2 out of the group. Kareem Hunt's going to be one of them. And I would go with Bucky. Yeah, I would go with Bucky here. I would go Hunt and Bucky because I think that Kareem Hunt, again, the offense with the Chiefs is obviously fantastic. And the situation with Bucky tonight, I knew we'd get a lot of Bucky Irving questions. I'm happy to address it because I've got a lot of confidence in Bucky Irving. I really do think there's a decent chance, like, we start to see him not take 100%. I think what we could see is that this backfield shifts from 50-50 because before the year, it was Rachaad White like 80-20. Then it's like gradually become 50-50. I think Bucky could take it tonight to 60-40 or 65-35 or 70-30. 70-30 is probably a stretch, but I do think we'll see Bucky be more involved than Rachaad White tonight. So I'm going to go with Rachaad White, and I'm going to go with Bucky Irving, and I'm going to go with Kareem Hunt. Appreciate the super chat. Keith Chief, what's going on? What's going on tonight? Appreciate the super chat. Full PPR, Rachaad White, Juwan Jennings, or Allen Lazard. See, I keep talking bad about Rachaad White. I will play Rachaad White in certain situations here. This is probably that situation. Juwan Jennings, I will say this. Juwan Jennings is probably he's closer than Lazard for me to play. But I'm leaning towards White because with Rachaad White, I do think he will see targets tonight. Like, what I honestly think could happen, I think the most likely scenario, if what I predict comes true, which is that Bucky starts to take over the backfield, 60-40, 65-35 tonight, I still think we're gonna see Rachaad White get a bunch of targets. I think he's a third down back tonight. Juwan Jennings, the matchup's great. He's been really good. One of these weeks, there will be an Ayuk week, just to build confidence back up, because he's been getting opportunities. It's a gut call. Go with your gut if you feel like Juwan Jennings is the better option. I'm going to go with Rachaad White, but I will leave it to you, because they are really close for me, to be honest with you. I probably could be convinced to play Juwan Jennings over Rachaad White if I wrestled with it in my own mind for a while, but right now, I'm going to say Rachaad White. Appreciate the super chat. Next up, we have Blitz and Spirits FFL. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Traded CMC and Pacheco for Debo and Moss before the recent news. But I need help with two flex in another league. Rico, Bucky, Trey Tucker, Tutu, and Braylon. Okay, so you traded McCaffrey and Pacheco for Debo and Moss before the recent news. But you need help with two flex. Rico, Bucky, Trey Tucker, Tutu, and Braylon. You know, I'm going to end up telling so many people to play Braylon Allen or Bucky Irving tonight. I really hope it doesn't backfire. Like, I really do hope so, because I've gotten a lot of Bucky questions tonight, and most of them are really ones that I'm comfortable with saying playing Bucky Irving in. I'm there again. Like, if you're taking two of these guys, I'm going to go with Bucky over Rico and Trey Tucker, and then I'm going to go with Tutu Atwell over Braylon Allen. Like, Bucky Irving, to me, again, I've said it a bunch. I don't really feel the need to rehash it all because I've said it a bunch tonight. I do think we start to see him take over the backfield. And with Tutu Atwell, I got so much flack for this heading into week 4. People were like, why isn't, so-and-so over Tutu Atwell? And it's like, listen, Tutu Atwell is the number one target. And especially if you're in a full PPR league, like, that's going to matter. You know what I mean? Like, I think that Tutu Atwell is a legit play. Braylon's fine. Like, I don't have a problem with playing Braylon if you wanted to. But ultimately, I just think that Tutu Atwell, like looking at last week, what he did. What did he do last week? Let's pull his numbers back up. I think he had another pretty solid performance last week, though, if I'm remembering it correctly. Tutu Atwell, where are you? Okay, Tutu Atwell last week, 6 targets, 4 receptions for 82 yards. Yeah, like that's 12 fantasy points in a full PPR format. 10.5. So yeah, I would say Tutu Atwell and Bucky Irving are my personal choices in this list. Appreciate the super chat. Next up we had Nate Dogg. What's going on, man? Appreciate it. Appreciate the super chat. Pick one: Likely, Kmet, or Kraft. And do I start Hubbard, Stevenson, Hunt, Irving, Sermon, or Javonte Williams? Okay. At tight end, I'm going to go with Kraft. Because the one thing that I think actually people are overlooking this week, since Dontavian Wicks, I kind of saw it like on different fantasy creators channels, like everyone was big on picking up Wicks this week. I'm fine with it, but I'm not like massive on it. I think that people are overlooking Tucker Kraft. Like Tucker Kraft, there's 2 things that are going into effect with him. Number one, he's blazed past Luke Musgrave as a tight end 1. Like Luke Musgrave is irrelevant in that offense. Number 2, I actually think a big beneficiary of Watson being gone is going to end up being Luke Musgrave. I think that the receivers are very inconsistent in Green Bay because there will be weeks where Romeo Doubs eats. Like, don't forget about Doubs. He will eat some weeks, and I think that probably affects Wicks more than it does with Tucker Kraft. I think Tucker Kraft is going to have a legit role. So I would go with Kraft. Kmet with Keenan back, I just don't. It's just too much. It's too much going on in that receiving room for Chicago Bears. And Caleb Williams, like, it just hasn't shown enough upside. So tight end, I'd go Kraft, and then do you start Hubbard, Stevenson, Hunt, Irving, Sermon, or Javonte Williams? I would go with Hunt over Bucky. Yeah, I'm happy to finally not go with Bucky because I don't. If Bucky busts tonight and it ruins a bunch of people's weeks to start, I'm gonna feel really bad. But I really do feel good about Bucky tonight in a lot of the situations being asked about him. Tonight, in this situation with Kareem Hunt, I would go with Kareem Hunt. Yeah, I think the offense is much better, and Hunt looked really good. Like, and the reality is, like, you shouldn't be worried about Carson Steele at this point. Carson Steele fumbled 2 out of the 3 games that he got a shot in, and this guy was already an undrafted rookie who, like, his own family didn't even think he'd make the team. Like, they literally threw a wedding for him on the what was it? Was it the Sunday night game? Sunday night game? I think so. Yeah, it was like the Sunday night game, and they threw a wedding, and he was supposed to be he was supposed to be like one of the groomsmen in his sister's wedding, and he was like, I can't. I made the team. So I don't think that Carson Steele is threatening him. Clyde, I don't know if he's coming back this week, but that doesn't scare me. Hunt really took over. So I'm good with Hunt this week. That's the guy. Oh, wait, no. I saw Chuba. No, I would play Chuba. I'd play Chuba over Kareem Hunt this week. I would. Chuba's on a roll right now. I don't think the matchup's great, obviously, versus the Bears, but Chuba is on a roll right now, and I intend to ride that. So with Chuba, I know he's taking like 85% of the backfield. Some Miles Sanders mixed in there, especially on passing downs, but I will go with Chuba over Hunt and over Irving. Yeah, that's what I would say. Appreciate the super chat, Nate Dogg. Always good to see you. Dizzy B, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Lamoden, I'm sure you meant London. Myers, Wandale, or Keaton? I'd go London here. I just want to. Hopefully, you're talking about Drake London. I'm assuming you're talking about Drake London. But I would go with Drake London here in this situation. I think Drake London, like, you can feel confident to him in a certain point. I read a comment today on my rest of season rankings video at the wide receiver position, And somebody called me out. They were like, listen, dude, like, I love you, but you have not changed your position on Drake London, and I feel like you should. And it's like, I get where people are coming from, I guess, but ultimately I'm not a big London guy. But the problem that I have with Wandale this week is without Malik Neighbors, I think he's going to struggle. I have a problem with Myers because he's going up against Pat Surtain. That dude is like that's like a you don't want to like approach that, especially with a guy who I don't think is a particularly like he's not even a high end wide receiver. Like he's not Mike Evans, he's not DK, and both those guys got shut down by Pat Surtain. So yeah, I think that London's the best play here. Keenan, I think he'll have a better week this week, but I gotta go with Drake London. Appreciate the super chat. Next up was Tristan Roberts. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat tonight. Charbonnet, Bucky, or Stevenson? Again, I'm gonna go against him, and I'm gonna go with Ramondre. Because I do think Ramondre actually has a sneaky good week. Like, Ramondre, he's obviously feeling the heat right now, right? Like, he's apparently being threatened of being benched. The reality with Ramondre is the matchup this week is so good, and I get it. Like, I'm not a big Ramondre guy. I actually think this is a week where afterwards you could sell him high. I do think it's a good week for him. I think he handles the workload. I think he gets confidence back this week, and I'll go with Ramondre over Bucky. I just think he's upside is higher than Bucky's this week, so I would do it personally. And Charbonnet, I would play Bucky over Charbonnet personally. Appreciate the super chat. One Nation RN4L. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. IDP 1-2-3 scoring. Love an IDP question. Need 2 defensive backs. D. Alford, Shamari Connor, Nate Hobbs, Isaiah Polamalu. Okay. You see with D. Alford. D. Alford he's been okay, right? My problem with corners is unless they're getting a bunch of tackles, like it doesn't traditionally work out too well in IDP. And I don't really know if like I see the upside in the matchup here tonight for D. Alford particularly. Last week he had a good game, 20.8 fantasy points in IDP 1-2-3 scoring, I think it was. He did have 8 tackles here, but the first 2 weeks, like he wasn't that involved. With Shamari Connor, I lean on. I'd probably go with D. Alford over Shamari Connor. I'd probably do that because ultimately I think what'll happen in that game is that I think that Connor doesn't get a ton of like over the middle of the field stops as a safety. I think what they do is they're going to run a lot in that game and they're going to throw deep as well. So I'd go with D over Connor. Nate Hobbs, I'm still probably leaning Alford here. Yeah, I'm gonna go with D. Alford here. I do think that what we saw last week was good. The week before he had 6 tackles, and I do think that the Bucs will throw quite a bit tonight. So I'll go with D. Alford tonight personally. Appreciate the super chat. Always love an IDP question as well. The big ticket. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat tonight. Should I start Bucky or Sermon? I'm going against Rachaad White. I'd go Bucky. Yeah, I'd go Bucky Irving. There's nothing more that I would love to if I had Rachaad White than there's nothing more that I would love than to beat the guy who played Rachaad White against me with Bucky Irving. And like I've said it, I think I've had a couple of these questions related to him tonight. With Trey Sermon, the head-to-head for me, I'm going with Bucky Irving because I just think his upside, he's got a little bit more of it this week. Like, with Bucky Irving, we've seen more from him in his short amount of time than what we've seen from Trey Sermon his entire career. Like, Sermon's been around since 2021, and he's been a nothing burger. So Bucky Irving, like, he already looks good. And again, I just ultimately I have a lot of belief tonight that we could start to see the Bucky Irving surge towards leading the backfield. With Sermon, I get it, like, he may monopolize the backfield this week without JT, but I just don't think his upside is that high as a player. I'll go with Bucky Irving. Appreciate the super chat, especially if I have the opportunity to play against Rachaad White. Charles Grosso, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Nothing here. I do think I saw another one from you down low. Yep, down here. Do you think Joe Mixon will start? If not, I have Mooney on my bench. Do I start him for Mixon on the flex? You know, obviously it makes it difficult because Mooney plays tonight. Joe Mixon, I saw he did not practice yesterday and he didn't practice today. That is probably an indication that he's not going to play. And so I don't think he's going to play because it happened last week. Like, he didn't practice on Thursday or Wednesday or Thursday, and then he ended up coming in on Friday and practicing. So what I thought was, like, oh, he practiced Friday, so he'll probably be back to, like, limited practice on Wednesday. He's missed practice the last 2 games. That to me indicates he's going backwards. Probably not a good sign. So even if he does play, he's probably a little limited in this game. I'd probably have to play Mooney. But again, I want to make this clear. In your situation here, you've got Mooney, who is a flex guy that you intend, like, you wouldn't play him ordinarily, right? But what you need to do here, since it's a Thursday night game, take out your wide receiver 2, put him in the flex, and put Mooney in wide receiver 2. Because you have a wide receiver position locked in after tonight. Let's say that your flex option goes down with an injury in practice tomorrow. But the guy that you want to play him for is a running back. Well, if he was in your wide receiver spot and Mooney was taken with the flex, then you don't have the duality of putting a running back or a wide receiver in there. I hope that's, like, making sense as I say it. Like, I feel like I'm not explaining that the best possible way, but bottom line, take out any Thursday night players of the flex, put them in a positional receiver category because you'll free up a lot of function in your flex spot depending on injuries here. So I would play Mooney, but I'd put him in the wide receiver spot. Appreciate the super chat, man. Next up, we had Jessica Lauren. Good to see you. Appreciate the super chat. Hello, Kraft or Ingram if he plays? Ugh, God. Ingram, man. Ingram has just been, I mean, he hasn't done anything, obviously. It's just been, like, I think I have personal feelings towards Ingram because I have him in a dynasty league and he's, like, really screwed me the last several weeks, obviously. So I have some, personal issues there with Ingram right now. The reality is when Ingram comes back, he will be relevant. Like, and I don't know if it's going to be this week. Let's see what his practice report was like. Evan Ingram. Let's see. Evan Ingram, limited again today. He was limited yesterday. I'd ultimately probably play Tucker Kraft. I think I would. Ingram is older, and this injury is not a positive thing. It doesn't typically, like, hamstring injuries are really, really scary if you suffer them this early. Like, they'll resurface on you. Reminds me of when Puka went down week 1 in, like, the third quarter. It was like, that injury I had read was, like, prone to happening again, and it happened again. And hamstrings are very similar. So I'd probably go with Kraft this week over Ingram. I would just kind of have Ingram on the bench until he does something. Appreciate the super chat tonight. And we will go ahead and take 2 more questions because we're coming up on game time. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. AJ Rome, what's going on? Rachaad White, Ray McLeod for the flex tonight. I let me see. Ray was injured, I know, this week, but he is playing. I don't have a ton of confidence in Ray. You know, Ray's done okay sparingly this year. I think that Rachaad White has a better workload tonight than with Ray. Ray ultimately, like, his ceiling is kind of like 10 or 12 fantasy points. And with Rachaad White, especially if you're in a PPR league, like, he can get in the end zone. Because the one thing I will give Rachaad White is he is a very good receiving back. I will give him that. So I'll go with Rachaad White, personally, myself. Appreciate the super chat. We're going to do one more question. We're going to go back up to the top here and answer this last question. And then we're going to enjoy Thursday Night Football tonight, guys. Appreciate y'all being in here tonight. The Watch Guy, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Two wide receivers and one flex. Terry, Pickens, Worthy, Ayuk, Judy. I would go with Terry. I would go with Pickens, and I would go with Worthy. That's what I would do. Terry, I think I have more confidence in him at this point because last week really helped me out. It really helped me out last week watching him get the targets that he did. He is the wide receiver one, obviously, but it's becoming more sustainable. He's not just relying on big plays. Pickens, I think the matchup's great, and obviously he is a wide receiver one. And then with Worthy, I think that I'd just rather take the shot on Worthy than I would with Ayuk. And I just continue to kind of bury Judy. I mean, realistically, Judy is a fine play. But with these guys, I'd still prefer Xavier Worthy. Worthy, I do think, actually has a lot of potential in this matchup. Like, obviously, he's really efficient with his touches. I've been saying it all week. I do think they're going to start to use him in more ways that, you know, open him up to more opportunities like possession receiver throws that they probably wouldn't have been more comfortable doing to start the year. But now they're in a position where they kind of have to. So I would go with Terry, I would go with Pickens, and I would go with Worthy. And that's going to do it tonight, guys. I appreciate everybody being in here. And let's enjoy Thursday Night Football. I'm excited for this game. So make sure to like the video on the way out, subscribe to the channel to show your support. And after tonight, the Kirk Cousins line is over on Underdog. Starting tomorrow, it is the Dak Prescott line at 0.5 yards. So let's all enjoy tonight. And tonight, after the game, I will break down the game as well. So stay tuned for that tonight. Good to see you guys. We'll talk to you later.